just wanted to show you kind of the most common CSS3 properties that you're going to see that you might find useful for projects in the future. There's many more than this, and I just showed you a whole big long list of them. But these are kind of the ones that are kind of the most significant. So you can click on each one of these, and they'll go to the reference in W3 schools. Each one of these are a link. This is the code, and then if you look down here, this is the results of those. So such as border radius, if you look at the way that's written up here, you can see there's 4 numbers. Starts in the top left corner and then goes the way around. You can see I just make the numbers bigger each time. If you only have one single number, it will just do that number for every corner. If you have 2, it will do that number for the top left, bottom right, and the top right and bottom left. So, you know, it depends on how you write it will kind of change. All right. So if you've ever seen like a circle for a button, they just do the border radius like 100%, and then that way it'll result in a circle. Okay. So you might have seen rounded shapes and things like that. That's how they're doing it. They're using border radius. You can use images, border image, in order to create a frame like this instead of just having a solid line or one of those pre-made, you know, grooves and dash and all those other things. You can actually do that. The text shadow, you might have noticed I use that in a lot of my titles and stuff like that. So text shadow can be useful, but it's not quite as useful as I would say box shadow, which will basically around the background color, it will create a box shadow, which is useful. It doesn't have to be black. You can see I did green here. There's also transition, and this one's really fun. So when you hover over it, it will do a transition. And there's also animation, which just will kind of do this. So these are a little bit more complicated. So if you see for the transition one, I actually had to put both of these in here. So you have basically the starting position. I have to define what I want the starting position is. And then on hover, we're going to talk about this later. That's just a pseudo class. I can change the color, and I also have it rotate 45 degrees. But you can see how you can use this to make an interesting menu item that when you hover over, it just kind of like shifts or something, right? So instead of just doing the regular, you know, changing of a background, you can actually have a transition, so it blends to it. And then animation, you can see, is even more complicated. Basically, it works by percentages. And so you have the initial right here, and then you have more kind of like your keyframes, like what's going to happen at 0%, 50%, and whatever. The actual length of it takes 3 seconds. Okay, so these get a little more complicated, particularly the animation one. So that's one of those things. If you did want to do some sort of animated component, to do that, you're going to find you're not going to be able to animate something like a cartoon character, but you can have little elements moving. Generally speaking, to be honest, you actually usually want to stay away from the animation stuff. The reason being is it's not very ADA compliant. Like having different color changes and things moving and stuff makes it difficult for people to see them. You'll see later on, like people get really crazy with some of their navigation, and it might be neat looking and it's interesting. However, it's more difficult for people to learn it and comprehend it and to interact with it. So typically moving components is not something